What's up, guys? Mitzi says hi. Um, Patreon.com/JordanOwen42 if you want to help me grow the channel and support me financially, as always. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit, follow up on my last video, and talk a little bit about my advice, not my last video related to Satanism, and talk about kind of what I see as the process for getting people away from Satanism and out of the Church of Satan and that kind of thing. And I say this because years ago, and this was probably, I think, 6 or 7 years ago at this point, at least, I got a message from somebody who expressed to me that some relatively close person in their family, like a nephew or a cousin, or maybe even a brother or something like that, was getting heavily into LaVeyan Satanism, and what was my advice, what were my suggestions for getting them out? And I said, well, the first thing is, it's tempting to want to go in and save somebody's soul right from the get-go and everything, and convince them to come back to Christianity, but you have to remember, he's already primed against that. He's already anticipating that, and he's probably got talking points ready for whatever you would want to throw at him. I certainly did when I was into this shit. Now, if you're just joining us, by the way, I do recommend watching my previous video first, which is called "Don't Get Into Anton LaVey / The Church of Satan." But my backstory with this, see, I can't really give you a big, impressive come to Jesus moment or something like that, because what happened for me was I went through about a 2 year period in my early 20s where I was really into that shit, into the LaVeyan Satanism stuff. It was really more like 18 months of sincere interest, followed by 6 months of general moving away from it before I finally announced publicly that I wasn't into it anymore, just because I wasn't. For months I hadn't even thought about it. But anyway, I didn't go back to Christ, I just kind of graduated into general atheism. And so what I told this person was, you don't want to, as tempting as it is to rush in and save the person, we have to move slowly. And here's the thing, I don't think I said this to this person, but think about, take a page from the Screw Tape Letters in a way, where if you've never read the Screw Tape Letters, it is this blisteringly brilliant philosophical novel by C.S. Lewis, written. It's a work of Christian philosophy written ironically from the and I here use the word ironically correctly, as many people don't. Written ironically from the perspective of Screwtape, who is a senior demon in hell, who is writing to his nephew Wormwood, who is up on Earth on assignment, tempting. He's been assigned to a man on Earth to tempt this man into hell, and this is his first job assignment. And so Screwtape is the whole novel is Screwtape's letters to Wormwood, hence the name, explaining what to do next and giving him advice and that kind of thing. And one of the things that Screwtape says is that the best road to hell is a gradual one, and that is the mirror image, or I should say the photo negative of C.S. Lewis's own view that spiritual growth happens gradually. It doesn't happen in big spiritual growth or development of any kind doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It's a gradual developmental process. And so, in the context of the Screwtape Letters, Wormwood, being naive and inexperienced at what he's doing, is wanting to go, he's wanting to get the patient, the man that he's assigned to, he's wanting to get this man to be tempted to do something really big, to become a serial adulterer, or to kill somebody in cold blood, or something like that. Some big moral failure that will definitely damn him to hell. And Screwtape is making the point of, actually, you want to hold off on that, because he can still be redeemed from all of that. Those big stumbles, he can be redeemed down the line. what you have to do, by embracing God, turning to God, what he has to do is be put slowly into a place where he can't get to those things anymore, where he's been moved completely away from them, where they become alien to him over time. So alien to him over time that he can't access redemption anymore. And he should be, as Screwtape puts it, the best road to hell is a gradual one, that you're gradually tempting, gradually getting this person to give up his spiritual growth, his spiritual life over time, until he just kind of drifts aimlessly into hell. That's the surest way to do it. Well, here's the thing. There is actually some wisdom in that observation, in the sense that when it comes to redemption and bringing people back around to Christ, we don't. It shouldn't be done in big, flourishing displays like that. It should be done gradually. Why? Because, like I pointed out with this person that asked me for advice, and this is getting back to what I told them, I said he's already primed against going back to Christ, so let's not try to do that right now. First, the first job is to get him away from LaVey and the Church of Satan and all of that stuff. And I said, in this regard, what you need to do is get him more interested in Friedrich Nietzsche and Ayn Rand. Don't get him involved in Might is Right, because that's a disgusting, ridiculous book that, taking our claws in, that's a disgusting, ridiculous book that is not for nothing one of those books that's referred to as the Bible of the racist right and that kind of thing. But on a more productive level, Ayn Rand and Friedrich Nietzsche are great. Certainly, these are names that need no introduction in the world of philosophy. And so they are both excellent gateway drugs into an interest in philosophy in general, and they certainly were for me. And what I discovered when I got into Ayn Rand, Friedrich Nietzsche, was I started to think, oh, okay, these are people of real depth and real depth and real intellect that actually have strikingly original ideas, in contrast to Anton LaVey, who was just cribbing these people. And that depth, philosophical depth, and developing a passion and a taste for that degree of philosophical depth opened up a whole world of new ideas to me, and new thoughts and new perspectives. And what happened was, I found that being opened up to that, I wanted to embrace not just the philosophers I agreed with at the time, which was Rand and Nietzsche and people in that vein. I wanted to hear from everybody, because all philosophy builds off of an established bulwark of ideas. That's why, there's the saying that all philosophy is a footnote to Plato, that kind of thing. Like, it builds off of an established groundwork, established framework, and you want to see, if you have a passion for philosophy, you want to see as much of that world base of knowledge as you possibly can, and come to understand it. And there's a joke, a meme I saw on the internet one time that shows, if you know who Yes Chad is the guy that he's always in profile. He's a blonde-haired guy in profile, and he has the big, thick Viking beard and everything. You've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And it shows this kind of child version of Yes Chad, baby child version of Yes Chad, talking to the adult Yes Chad, and the baby version says, "Philosophy is stupid and full of useless test cases," and Yes Chad says, "Go study it." And then in the next panel you see the child version of Yes Chad is now another Yes Chad, so there's two of them. And the formerly child Yes Chad says, "Philosophy is stupid and full of useless test cases." And the original Yes Chad says, "Very good." That's kind of making the point that even the philosophy that proves the philosophical ideas that prove to be ridiculous and useless, and to that extent, I suppose you might even be able to incorporate Might is Right at that point, but you're definitely playing with fire on that one. But at that point, all of those philosophical ideas start to become more robust and interesting and fuller and fascinating. And when you develop that passion, and this is very much what happened with C.S. Lewis as well, is when you develop that passion for philosophy, for mythology, for all of that, and you can start to introduce an appreciation for allegory, an appreciation for people like Carl Jung that saw very much the parallels between religious spiritual growth and positive psychological development, psychological healing, and start to introduce those things and start to create not a desire for Christianity that's built around around fear, the fear of going to hell and that sort of thing, but rather around a robust appreciation of spiritual growth and spiritual development. And when you've built that in the person, instilled that in the person, you find yourself, and I say this because as I'm describing this, the person, I don't remember the exact relationship again, but the person that I was responding to was someone who had a mentorly elder standing with this person. I don't think it was a parent directly, but somebody that could influence the person's growth in that way. Is what I'm saying, putting it in this terminology. But once you've gotten them to that point, you can start introducing Kierkegaard. You could start introducing even C.S. Lewis and things like that. But you could start introducing philosophers, even going as far as Plato and the philosophers who formed the philosophical substrates of what's espoused in Christianity and that kind of thing. At that point, you are in a better place to reach somebody. Especially because if you stop and think about it, that is in line with what is meant in general by someone being on a spiritual journey. One thing I said in the last video was it doesn't, I really don't think that the kind of conversions that happen when someone bops you on the head with a Bible and you fall to your knees at a charismatic church service and make some grand declaration, I don't think those are very sincere, and I don't think they last very long. It's kind of like there's a video that went viral of this guy at a charismatic church service, and he takes the microphone and goes, "I don't like men's no more." And it is just this thing that went viral. And he's posted videos since then following up, and it's very obvious that he is still just an absolute screaming queen, and he's still very obviously gay, and he's just living in complete denial, which is unfortunate for him. And I want to emphasize, by the way, this is the Christianity I practice is far more liberal than what organizations like the Church of Satan have put themselves in odds against. So no, I have no problem with a person being gay, and I think it's entirely possible to be gay and Christian. I think that's totally fine. But anyway, so that is the mindset that you want somebody to be in. Screwtape says something very interesting in the first letter, in the Screwtape letters. Says a lot of interesting things, but this one thing he says, human beings seem to think that devils are trying to put things into their brains. And he says, in reality, our best work is done by keeping things out, by keeping people from thinking, from keeping them out of the very internal thought processes and personal developments that would move them towards Jesus and towards Christ and that sort of thing. In his mind, best to not even risk letting people get on that track in the first place. And so that's where the real meat of it is, and that's where the real developments of it all come from. Where the real personal developments come from. So that would be my advice to someone that wants to try to get someone away from all of that, is to encourage the wider perspective that they are denying themselves, and a wider thirst for knowledge, because the first thing is moving them away from it. And once you've gotten them sufficiently away from Satanism, you can start to saw the feet off of the philosophers that influence Satanism. Now, again, there are some things that Nietzsche and Rand believe that are objectively true. I mean, you see, I've still got their books up on the shelf there. But there are other things, that other parts of their philosophies that don't work. And, you can start to emphasize things like, well, Ayn Rand's idea that nobody can genuinely be altruistic was based on a very idiosyncratic personal definition of altruism that she had that nobody else actually uses. You can emphasize the point that all of Nietzsche's fascination with master types and slave types was really born out of the fact that he was just a whiny little German incel that couldn't get laid, and that kind of thing. Was trying to figure out why the Chads and Stacys around him seemed to have life so much easier, or they were German, I guess they were Chadsvich and Steinskys or something, I don't know. But anyway, you can start to do that and start to encourage some deeper spiritual growth that way. And as much fun as I make of Nietzsche there, I do. He is still a amazing prose writer, a stylist par excellence. I'm not denying that at all. But that's the angle to take. That's the way to work it. I'm going to close just by saying I thought about how much of this I want to say. There's one user that keeps doing this thing, as in this ongoing discussion I've been having about Satanism and interrelated topics. There's this one user that keeps showing up and writing comments, and then when I respond in video or respond in text message, deletes the comments and then responds later under another handle, another profile. And you're obviously the same person doing it every time, especially because, like, between what you said a couple of days ago and what you put up this morning, I mean, you said almost verbatim the same thing on two different profiles. I'm going to cordially say that your behavior is making me uncomfortable, and so I'm not going to engage with it further. Suffice to say, I know you're going to, as I say that, and I'll wrap this up, but I know you're going to want to probably say that I'm doing that because of the truths you've offered that I'm too afraid to confront. So I'll lay this down for you very quickly. You seem to be very interested in trying to debunk what I said about Anton LaVey ripping off Might is Right by Ragnar Redbeard. And you said a couple of things that I really take issue with. One was, in fact, see, I saved your comment so I can respond. Oh yeah, you said talking about Ragnar Redbeard. You said this. You mentioned a book which I'm not going to advertise that supposedly debunks a lot of the things I said. I'll get back to that in a moment. But you said the only thing that the book's interviews section might not cover in detail is the issue of Might is Right by Ragnar Redbeard. Anton LaVey wrote a detailed introduction to that book's 1996 edition, but Shane Bugbee took it out of print in 2016 because of all the racists who were contacting him with praise for the book. He's spoken about this publicly and at length. Yes, like I said, it's one of those books that's described as a Bible for the racist right, and you really might want to have an "Are we the baddies" moment about that one. But anyway, fortunately, a guy named Adam Campbell featured the book in his Reading Aloud YouTube series, and he begins by reading what Anton LaVey said about the book. It was a little different from what people have quoted him as saying about it, the quote that was rehashed in this video. Before I go on to the rest of what you said, you keep trying to hold up in multiple comments now. You've tried to hold up this thing about Anton LaVey writing this praiseworthy introduction for an edition of the book in 1996 that somehow absolves him. Okay, stop for a minute. You are filling in a lot of gaps for him, which is what he, or anybody who's speaking on his behalf, which is what they would like you to do. That 1996 edition came out roughly 30 years after. Um, Came out 30 years after the founding of the Church of Satan, and close to 30 years after the writing of Might is Right. I mean, sorry, the writing of the publication, sorry, of the Satanic Bible. And the book went through printing after printing after printing without acknowledging that an entire chapter of it had been lifted from Might is Right. And once people figured out what Anton LaVey was doing there, he pivoted and changed his tone and started extolling the virtues of the book and how much he loved it and how, it's all what it meant to him and everything. And that was a very obvious redirect from a man who had a long established track record as a carny, as a boardwalk manipulator type person. And it's a very obvious pivot. So, you mentioned all of the things that have supposedly been debunked, that I said and all of that stuff. The Church of Satan has put out a lot of things through the years in response to the claims made by Zena LaVey and a lot of other people like that. And ultimately, it all comes down to he said, she said on a lot of these things. You don't know. I don't know what specifically you're referring to that you think was debunked by that I said that was debunked by that book, because you didn't specify it, nor do I care to hear from you again. But the the thing that it ultimately comes down to is, with all of these he said, she said things, why am I inclined not to believe the people defending Anton LaVey? Anton LaVey wrote and published and advocated a philosophy that was very much built around manipulation, the kind of things that he learned as a carny. He was a huge fan of P.T. Barnum and all of that, and manipulating people, putting one over on people, that kind of thing. And if you want a perfect example of what I'm talking about, the Satanic Witch is a great example of that. The Satanic Witch, if you haven't read it, is basically just pickup artistry for women, like the same slimy manipulation crap that pickup artists are taught is the same kinds of things are repackaged and repurposed for women to supposedly assist them in man catching and that kind of thing. It's a deeply dishonest and highly Machiavellian approach to seduction and relationships and human interaction and all of that. And it's also, a lot of it is just completely ridiculous. Like, there's a section in there about when you need to serve salad with dressing that smells like your vagina and that kind of thing. But you read that book, and good, honest people of integrity don't write things like that. They have significant moral qualms about advocating that kind of manipulation and that kind of abuse and that kind of mistreatment of people. And so when I see somebody that's built that as his brand versus people who are calling him out on things like that Might is Right passage is just one example. I have to, in the interest of intellectual and personal honesty, give credence to those people, especially because a lot of it comes down to, when it comes down to he said, she said, a lot of it, you have to also stop and think, well, people like Zena LaVey were there, not these other people who came by after the fact. But anyway, that's the first thing. It should be very obvious to you. From what I understand, there was one edition of the Satanic Bible that was published with an acknowledgement to Ragnar Redbeard, but that went out of print very quickly. And he tried to get away with that plagiarism for decades. And when he finally did get caught in the act, he pivoted. He just pivoted to a different to extolling the virtues of it and that kind of thing, to maybe make people forget what he'd done. This is not some insanely heinous act of evil by any stretch. He's not It's not it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a deeply dishonest thing. And regardless of what I think about Ragnar Redbeard, nobody deserves to have their work stolen like that. And I commented more on that in the first video, the who Ragnar Redbeard most likely was and everything. But anyway, then this person, and this is why when you say things like this is why I don't want to interact with you any further. He said, "This video prompted me to finally read Might is Right instead of just skimming it, sort of like a certain political blowhard's excessive denigration of South Park, including false descriptions like irrelevant or no longer funny, made me more curious to check out their latest episode." Um, Based on things you say on this in this post, you are someone that is well aware of me and my views and how I feel about things, and you're well aware of the fact that comparing me to Donald Trump is something that would get under my skin, and it does. Congratulations, you got under somebody's skin. You are obviously a master of lesser magic. But more so to that point, that idea, what you're trying to do there, trying to take the power of what I'm saying away by reframing it as something that's encouraging you to do the thing I'm telling people not to do. Uh, Again, you're not going to put one over on me with this. I've read all of the books you've read. I know all of the satanic philosophy and all of that stuff, and I know that you're trying to reframe and manipulate the issue, trying to put me on the defensive with that. I don't appreciate it. I don't like it, and again, that's why we're not going to engage any further. And uh, the thing you have to remember is it does not hurt me if you go read Might is Right. That hurts you. Or at the very least, I shouldn't say reading it, but if you take it seriously or decide to apply its ideas to your life, rather, that doesn't hurt me at all. That hurts you. And you telling me that you're going to go read Might is Right now out of spite is like telling me that you're going to go drink Ipecac out of spite. I mean, I don't I don't know how you think this is going to hurt anyone other than you. And I've had a lot of people try that manipulation tactic with me in different ways. It doesn't, I guess, it doesn't bear a lot more discussion. But let's say, for example, now you might want to deny that these manipulation tactics are what you're doing. You might want to deny that and say that that's not it. Well, let's entertain the idea that you really aren't trying to be manipulative, even though I'm detecting in this a one-to-one transfer of ideas I've already read from satanic writers long before, long before you did. But let's say that you really are trying to be sincere in all of this, and you really are trying to be truthful and put yourself forward. And and that I'm reading incorrectly, that you're trying to manipulate me and the readers in general, the viewers in general here. Well, the reason I'm arriving at that conclusion is because I'm seeing parallels between what you're saying and the deeply dishonest manipulation tactics that these people have espoused for a long time. Why would you want to if you're trying to be an honorable and decent human being, why would you want to put yourself in line with that? Why would you want to put yourself in a situation where people might confuse your sincerity for lies and chicanery? I mean, I don't know how anyone would gain from that. Um, the Church of Satan has always been very adamant that you're not required to be a public Satanist, and there definitely is some wisdom in that advice there. Anyway, uh, so you go on to say, so I hope this video encourages the more thoughtful people who view it to read what Anton LaVey actually said. Okay, I'm going to stop you there because, again, you're trying to drive a wedge. What you're doing is, when you say that, you're trying to create a question in the reader's mind. Most people, if you say, Are you a thoughtful person? Are you an intelligent, thinking, free thinking person? Most people will say yes. And the sad thing is, they'll actually cotton to what you want them to believe in an effort to demonstrate that they're free thinking people. Again, this is all going back to Barnum, all going back to the Boardwalk Carney shit that Anton LaVey was so fascinated with. You're not fooling anybody. Anyway, it goes on. It says he was strikingly original, especially in his less formal books or interviews where he cut loose a bit. He wasn't all that offended by people who disagreed with him anyway. He was in the. He knew he was in the minority, sort of like Nietzsche was ahead of his time. What did offend him was being misrepresented, and even the owner of this channel still has to admit that did happen a lot. I remember some videos now. Once again, now that you think you've put me on the defensive in my position, you've kind of drained the power from what I'm trying to say. Now you think you can cudgel me into making concessions to you. So I remember some videos here that were critical of that ridiculous book Michelle Remembers. Yes, you do, and I still am critical of the book Michelle Remembers. Since coming back to Christ, I have never said anything positive about Michelle Remembers. I never said anything positive about Michelle Remembers before coming back to Christ. You're putting words in my mouth. Now, if you don't know, Michelle Remembers is a long ago disproven hoax book that was put out by a psychotherapist and his client, his patient, the titular Michelle. They eventually married each other, and it was supposed to be a testimony from this woman who had, through a power of hypnosis, recovered forgotten, lost memories of participating in satanic rituals as a child and being subjected to satanic sexual ritual abuse. And it was considered one of the books that was a foundational text for what became the Satanic Panic in the early 1980s. I had wanted to say I'd wanted to say one thing positive about the Church of Satan that I alluded to in the last video on Satanism, and I will say that a number of prominent Satanists, Zena LaVey, Nicholas Schreck, also the aforementioned Boyd Rice, King Diamond, and a number of other people like that, really did do actually a good job of stepping up and putting to bed a lot of the rumors that came out of the Satanic Panic. If you and putting a lot, countering a lot of that, challenging a lot of it. And if you don't know about the Satanic Panic, it was a moral hysteria, that a moral panic that happened in the early 1980s, really persisted into about the mid 90s. That were these ideas that satanic groups were kidnapping children and sacrificing them in ritual sexual abuse, and kidnapping women and forcing them to become breeders for satanic rituals and things like that. All of this crazy malarkey. In over 40 years of this crap, there has never been a single shred of objective evidence to support any of it. Michelle Remembers, the book Michelle Remembers, was very quickly debunked. In fact, Anton LaVey, as I recall, threatened to sue, as well he should have, threatened to sue them. And she was claiming things like that human sacrifices that involved people screaming at the top of their lungs were being conducted in, like a cemetery in a major metropolitan area where surely someone would have heard that if it was happening. Things like that. It was it was a very quickly debunked book, but it set off a lot of insane, ridiculous nonsense. People were falsely accused of horrible crimes, of child abuse and child endangerment and child molestation and things like that, put in jail erroneously only to later be exonerated, all kinds of things like that. I have never, ever said anything positive about Michelle Remembers, and I have been completely consistent about that, and certainly I do not need to be a card-carrying Satanist to know that Michelle Remembers is an absolute hoax. So again, that is you trying to put words in my mouth. Now, you went on to say, and I remember a good interview with Boyd Rice years ago. Boyd is also, etc. Okay, you keep bringing this up, this thing about the fact that yes, I interviewed Boyd Rice for my channel 11 years ago. That does not bind me to anything, and furthermore, I don't have to be a Satanist to appreciate Boyd Rice's art. You keep bringing that interview up like I'm somehow like it somehow obligates me to be in line with his point of view or something like that, or that there's some hypocrisy here. I can appreciate Boyd Rice's music and his performance art and all of that without being a Satanist, just like I can appreciate Cat Stevens without joining Islam, and I can appreciate Leonard Cohen without joining Judaism, and I can appreciate um, I can even appreciate things like the music put out by groups like Hillsong without being that branch of Christianity. I can appreciate the music of Edgar Winter and Beck and Chick Corea without being a Scientologist, etc., etc. I mean, it just always comes back to that. But I love Boyd Rice's work because he creates these fascinating musical soundscapes by doing things like taking old records and cooking them in the oven and drilling off center holes in them and all of this stuff. And there's just tremendous creativity in these soundscapes that he makes, and that's just one example of it. And he's also charming and charismatic and very funny and interesting to talk to. Has a lot of cool stories. But again, that doesn't require me to hold out some kind of support for Anton LaVey. And if I have not talked to Boyd since that interview. We exchanged a couple things after, but since about that time, I haven't talked to Boyd. If he wanted to, speak out against what I'm saying here, or I have some kind of denouncing of me or something, that would be unfortunate. I wouldn't like that, but it doesn't change the fact that this is where I am in my life now. Anyway, so I'm gonna cut to the chase on the rest of the things you said. You started talking about how everyone can have their own opinion but not their own facts. At some point, facts, we don't ever have all the facts, and at some point we're not going to get all the facts on things, and we have to piece things together as best we can based on the information that we have. And to go back to your original point, when somebody spends decades trying to pass off someone else's work as their own, and then when they're finally caught in the act, they spin around and start talking about start praising the work and how much it's meant to them and everything, rather than admit fault and admit that they admit what they've done and that they should have cited their source on that. That tells me all I need to know. So is it possible that he was just some kind of wide-eyed innocent that didn't realize his mistake and also forgot to acknowledge what had happened in light of how it looked? Yeah, that's possible. It's just ridiculously unlikely, especially in light of, again, the fact that this is a person who wrote quite a lot, rather extensively, on how to manipulate people and screw people over uh, sucker people and just all, and that general kind of thing. I mean, so that's the answer I'm forced to come to. And again, like I said, I don't like this thing. I have a feeling I just reflexively blocked the profile that you sent me that message on. If you'd like to send me some kind of some kind of conciliatory message on another account, just to clarify or whatever, that's fine. But I do not care to continue having this discussion. The constantly posting things and then deleting them after I've responded to them, especially after I've responded to them in video format. It really bothers me, and I really don't appreciate that. So, anyway, all of that said, I hope that was helpful to people.